Changes to the tax laws around investment properties could be on the cards in New Zealand, and not everyone is happy about it. CEO of the Property Institute of New Zealand, Ashley Church, is one of them. He's here to tell us why. Tēnā koe, good morning.
G'day, Jack.
Righto, let's talk ring fencing.
Yep.
What is ring fencing?
So it's a fairly dry topic, but it's quite important, so let me see if I can make it a bit interesting. If you own a property investor, then by dint of the fact that you own that property, you are in fact in business. So if you make a profit on that property, then you pay tax on that profit. If you make a loss on the operation of that property, then you can claim that loss. And so just to give you an example of how that works, Jack, there'll be a number of your viewers who are property investors, probably own one property and that they've bought over the last 10, 15 years. If the costs on that property are a cost to the property, so interest, rates, insurance, maintenance on that property, those are all costs. Let's say in this example that those add up to $30,000 per year, and let's say that the rent on that property, the income is $35,000 per year. That's a profit, a $5,000 profit, and they pay tax on that profit. But conversely, if the costs are $30,000 and the rent's $25,000, they've made a $5,000 loss. They can take that loss and they can apply it to their other income, and that actually reduces their taxable income, so they get a refund on that. Now that's no different to the way that any other form of investment, or in fact any business, is treated.
Now the government is proposing ring fencing laws, which would mean you can't offset that loss against your other income. Correct,
and they're only proposing to do that in respect of property investment. No other form of business, so this is purely about property investors, and it's effectively treating property investors differently to any other form of business.
So why would the government do that?
Well, I don't want to think that.
No, but what's the justification?
Well, their justification is they're saying they're doing it to even up the market for first-home buyers and for property buyers away from nasty property investors and speculators. But that's nonsense, because the reality is that the market settled about 18 months ago and prices have settled right down. We know where first-home buyers and buyers are in the market, because the stats are pretty clear on that. That's levelled off.
It's still pretty difficult for first-time buyers in our biggest centres.
It is difficult, but the figures would indicate that they are actually now the #1 buyer of property. First-time buyers are buying more property than anybody else is currently, and that's levelled off at a certain level, but it's still much higher than property investors in this market.
They're only about 20%, aren't they?
Yeah, but much higher than, as I say, than anybody else who's in the market. So that's the reason that they're purporting. I would argue that this is ideological and political. This is part of this agenda which we've talked about before, which is about scaring property investors out of the market because they're nasty and because they're making money on property. Now, the problem with that's fine, you're entitled to hold that ideology, but the problem with that in this market, as we already know, is that we've got a shortage of rentals. We need more rentals. So this is a crazy, insane time to be doing things that are actually going to scare people away from the market when you actually need people to be investing more in rentals.
If this does pass into law, what will be the impact on property investors?
Well, the impact on property investors will actually be pretty scary. So property does eventually make a profit. If you're an investor over a period of time, and that can be quite a long time, property will eventually make a profit, and you'll pay tax on that. But in the first few years, it's quite difficult. So certainly for somebody who's bought a property over the last few years, it is almost certainly what's called negatively geared, which means that it actually costs more to own than you make on it. That will scare those people away. Basically, they're not getting any capital growth. The property's going to cost them even more than it does now. Essentially what will happen is people will say, this is way too hard. Why would I do it? I'll sell my property and I'll get out of it. That's got a massive impact on the market overall. And on
will you add to that the bright line test and everything that is geared against speculation at the moment?
Yes, but that's another thing. There's a difference between speculation and property investment, and the government tends to conflate those terms as if they're the same thing. Speculators are people who are in the market for a very short period of time, sometimes only months. They do a property up, they renovate it, they put it back into the market. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes if the market's running really hot, then they'll simply buy a property and sell it. And then those people to some degree are a blight on the market. That's not property investors. They're in the market for a very, very long period of time. So the bright line test dealt with speculators. It's basically made sure that those people pay tax, and I don't think anybody would argue that. But this is going a step way too far. This is about putting an imposition on people who are already finding it tough, who are actually providing a social good to the market.
Is there any reasonable alternative?
Well, the alternatives don't do it.
Yeah.
I guess quite simply. I mean, let me give you an example of the difference between ideologically the way a government can treat the situation. You've got a country where you've got some people who are doing pretty well, and you've got some people who are doing not so well. As a government, you can do one of two things. You can either look at that group who are doing well and you can say, isn't that great? We've got a section of society who's doing well. Now let's see what we can do about people who, for no fault of their own, aren't doing so well, and bring them up to the same level. That's a responsible way to deal with your society. Or you can say, we've got a group doing well and a group doing not so well. Let's bring that group that are doing well down to the same level as the people.
Well, I'm sure the government would say, let's bring them down a little bit if it means bringing up the rest, right? Like you say, ideology.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. As always, Ashley Church from the Property Institute.
I wonder if Ashley would actually go to the movies in his... Would you go to the movies in your pyjamas, Ashley?
Oh, gosh, if you'd seen me in my pyjamas, no, definitely not.